We seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
Leader of the opposition, you have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style, and so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
This is a very interesting question.
The Bubb Report with Dr. Kellon Bubb. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. I am your humble host, Dr. Kellon Bubb. This is, of course, the October 13th edition of the program. Now, if you're joining us on Facebook, please do us a favor by sharing this week's live stream. And for those of you over at YouTube, do us a favor by liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Your engagement, in particular with our YouTube channel, causes us to grow and reach a wider audience. Of course, you can catch repeat episodes of the Bubb Report on WPG television tonight at 8 p.m. as well as on GBN television this coming Wednesday at 5 p.m. And now for this week's editorial. Now, over the last few days, a Dear Employee letter purported to be from the National Insurance Scheme went viral on social media, in which the National Insurance Scheme sought to explain the incremental increases in the contribution rate from 12 to 16% from 2024 to 2031. The letter also explained that the increases will be made to the retirement age and number of contributions respectively. The social media users who shared the viral circular leaves out much needed context and gives the impression that these decisions are new, when in fact the 13th actuarial review of the National Insurance Fund as of December 31st, 2021 made those recommendations to the National Insurance Board. The report was done in accordance with Section 2022 of the Grenada National Insurance Act 1983 and was prepared 3 years after the 12th actuarial review was conducted. Now, according to the 2022 report, its main objective was to determine if the NIS, the National Insurance System in Grenada, operates on sound financial and actuarial basis, and if it provides adequate and affordable levels of income protection. Now, where considered necessary, recommendations aimed at ensuring that these objectives can be achieved for current and future generations were made. As shown in a particular chart in that report, reserves are projected to be depleted in 2034 under the best estimate scenario if the contribution rate is not increased and or benefit reforms are not made. Now, when reserves are exhausted, there will only be two possible sources of additional income to meet benefits payments. One, higher contributions, and two, special transfers from government. At the current state of fund finances, higher investment returns will have little material impact on reserves. Projections were also made under two different sets of assumptions, one optimistic and one pessimistic. Now, following are the key results expressed in ranges for these projection sets. 1. Total expenditure will exceed total income in all years, except in 2022 and 2023, if equity investments perform well. 2. The fund will be depleted between 2033 and 2035. I say that again. The fund will be depleted between 2033 and 2035. 3. The pay-as-you-go rate in 2034, around the time the fund is projected to be depleted, will be between 24 and 26% respectively. The reality is that pension systems in Grenada and the Caribbean will run out of funds within the next 10 to 15 years unless urgent reforms are implemented to ensure their sustainability, according to the Inter-American Development Bank. Now, Caribbean countries can build more resilient safety nets for their aging populations by addressing administrative inefficiencies, improving investment strategies, and considering adjustments to the retirement age, among other measures, according to a report titled Building Resilient Safety Nets in the Caribbean, Future-Proofing Retirement Incomes. Now, many national insurance schemes in the world, including those in the Caribbean, began their operations under circumstances that are very different from today. Their financial viability was easier to maintain because there were many workers contributing for each retired individual. As outlined above, Caribbean old age social security programs continue to achieve varying degrees of success in ensuring reasonable retirement incomes for some of the elderly and in reducing the risk of poverty for many elderly citizens across the region. That said, demographic forces are now at play, and without decisive action, such as increasing contributions, national insurance schemes face an existential threat. So viewers and listeners, please stand by as we speak with Senator Nolan Cox, NNP's caretaker political representative for the Sister Isles of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Senator Cox was supposed to be joined by Minister Andy Williams, but this morning we received a report that he will not be appearing on the Bubb Report. We'll be saying more on this after we come up for air. So please stand by. We'll be right back after this.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Now, we've been getting some comments that our audio is low. We are currently attempting to rectify that issue, but until we do so, the show must go on, as they say. So my producer is working on rectifying that audio issue on background, and of course, the show must go on. So a couple things before we get to our first guest this morning. We have been trying over the last 2 months, I would say since September, to bring both sides together, to bring both parties together in respect of having a full-throated conversation on some of the post-Hurricane Beryl issues that are occurring both in northern Grenada and on the sister isles of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Now, these conversations actually commenced in early September, and that would have been the week of September 14th. And I'm looking at the correspondence here from Ms. Neela Etienne, who is the press secretary to the Prime Minister. In our conversations, we here at the Bubb Report, first and foremost, requested the presence of the Member of Parliament for Carriacou and Petite Martinique as the substantive representative, because he's also the minister responsible for Carriacou and Petite Martinique affairs. Again, that was in early September. Obviously, there were some scheduling issues on his part. There were some scheduling issues also on the part of Senator Cox, who is here this morning. And we had to reschedule the program, but we subsequently had several episodes in which we addressed some of the issues in respect of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. So there was some debate and chatter that somehow we were trying to pull a fast one on the Minister for Carriacou and Petite Martinique Affairs by suggesting that he was not invited on the program, but through the press secretary. And we have correspondence here to prove that we did. We do not engage in this business of bait and switch. This is not the conduct of this platform. In any event, the minister responsible for implementation, mobilization, and transformation, that's the Honorable Andy Williams, we felt would have been a suitable replacement for Minister MP Tevin Andrews, the Honorable Tevin Andrews of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, because, of course, the MIT is doing a lot of the implementation work in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. But this morning we received a message at 8:45. It came in at correct 8:45 a.m. from the press secretary saying, quote, "I have some disappointing news. Unfortunately, Minister Williams is no longer able to join the Bubb Report this morning. This is unprecedented, and I do apologize because I know how it is inconvenient given the notice." So I just thought that we give that background context to the production of this week's program. Now, we will continue and we will press on. So I'm going to check the comments now to see if any of the audio issues has been resolved, but I'm hearing that is good now. My producer is telling me that the audio is good. So we will press on with the program. Now, over the last 2 months, the Bubb Report has assembled various panels of experts to dissect and make sense of the ongoing recovery and rebuilding efforts taking place in northern Grenada, as well as Grenada's sister islands of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Now, before the close of the last parliamentary session, government approved additional spending for the current fiscal year in the sum of just over 269.5 million EC dollars, a large sum of which was allocated to the Ministry of Mobilization, Implementation, and Transformation, as well as housing to aid in post-Beryl recovery efforts. Some of the supplementary will be funded through the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, or CRIF. CRIF's parametric insurance policies make payments based on the intensity of an event and the amount of loss calculated in a pre-agreed model caused by these events. The payouts to Grenada on its tropical cyclone policy is the single largest payout by CRIF. Now, I'm happy to be joined now by Senator the Honorable Nolan Cox. I believe, Senator, this is the very first appearance you're making on the Bubb Report since the last election. You were here previously as the caretaker candidate for the constituency of the South St. George. And of course, we know that several events occurred in your life in respect of the passing of your dearly departed wife, of which we extend our condolences to you, sir. And this is your first time on the program, but we have a lot to talk about, sir. First and foremost, before we get started, how is life in the Senate? How is that going? And how is your caretaker responsibilities on the sister isles of Carriacou and Petite Martinique?
First of all, Dr. Bob, let me say a pleasant morning to you and viewers, listeners. Yes, it's been a while since I've been on. And also let me take this opportunity to also extend my apologies for not being able to come. I think it's about 5 weeks we have been trying to get this engagement sorted out.
Yes.
We kind of barely made it today because I do also have some other personal pressing issues, which let me just try and make sure it happened today. I didn't want to disappoint you any further. So please accept my apologies in such regard.
Everybody's busy. Your colleague MP is also busy. So proceed.
Well, yes, I presume so. But yes, it's Carriacou and Petite Martinique. It's a very difficult time for everybody on Ireland right now. Persons would have received varying degrees of damages. However, in its totality, it's a challenging time for everybody: businesses, fishermen, farmers, everybody. So I think we are coping as best as we can. Persons are trying to do the best in terms of recovery to see how quickly we can get back to some form of normalcy. So that is where we are on Ireland.
Yes, Senator Cox, let us begin by, I always like to begin with positives first. In your assessment, of course, your political party, in my interview with the Honorable Peter David, when he appeared on the program, also engaged in recovery efforts in Carriacou by providing sanitation facilities by way of the porta potties. I believe you also have a Meals on Wheels program. And of course, we had the work done by Samaritan's Purse and other not-for-profit aid organizations. But in respect of the government response in Carriacou and Petite Martinique, can you articulate what has worked positively? And that was the question I was going to ask to Minister Williams as well. But what has worked positively in respect of the government's response to Beryl in Carriacou?
One of the things that I did indicate on other settings, other programs, I did indicate that the cleaning aspect of using persons to engage in the cleanup aspect of the program, actually going to communities, picking up the garbage. I think that in itself is a very good initiative, and that has been going pretty well. That is well received. But on the back end of it, is removing the garbage in total on island. That in itself has not really gone on as people have expected it to be. There's still a large amongst the majority of the garbage are still on island, and I think that is where the challenge is. But in respective communities, persons going into respective communities and cleaning, I think that has been going pretty well.
Very well. You're only speaking of cleaning here. You're not speaking of infrastructure rebuilding or anything like that. The state of the hospitals, the schools. Well, I mean, we're going to get to issues around what's happening there. Yeah. But you have no comment on the state of infrastructure rebuilding. I'm talking about government infrastructure stock.
Right. So in terms of the infrastructure, I do know that the hospital roof has been replaced. I visited there myself, and they have been trying to do some internal work to trying to get the place operational. So the hospital is not back up and running as yet. They have been cleaning. Of course, they're going to have plumbing issues. They're going to have electrical issues. And that is not separate and apart for the hospital alone, but also for every home. So while a home may lose a roof, and somebody may on their own undertaking replace that roof, there are other internal works like the cupboards, electricals, plumbing, maybe tiles, things like that. So if you see somebody's roof goes on, they're basically far from finished. And I think it's not a sign that everything is all good and well, but it just means that they have made some progress in terms of removing the tops and getting covered. But a lot of work is left undone inside. Yeah. So I know that they have done some work, I believe, on the administrative building. That work is basically led by the Guyanese Defense Force. They have also the Guyanese Defense Force have been doing some work on the Hillsborough Secondary School. Hillsborough Secondary School. I think government did some work on the Bishop's College Secondary School to get it back to some state of readiness, and Leicester School as well. But I learned recently that Leicester School had to be closed because there was apparently some electrical fire So there are challenges there. So as I indicate, while the roof may go on, there are going to be other issues internally. And that is why I said on another program that I think the time earmarked for reopening of schools were probably not appropriate in terms of readiness. So, and you can see the effects of that happening right now.
So, if your administration were, if your political organization were in the driving seat, what would have been your suggestions in respect of the reopening of schools? Because of course the teachers union as well, they also highlighted some difficulties with that. So, for example, housing the students on the some students on the tents who still remain unhoused in respect of the substantive school buildings. But what would have been your administration's approach to treating with the issue of the reopening of schools? Would you have continued to delay the reopening of schools? Would you have repatriated all students? Well, not repatriated, but relocated students to Grenada, mainland Grenada, to do that? What would have been your approach?
Well, I did made some previous pronouncements on other programs, other platforms,
yes,
as to a likely approach, and I did made it in the context of even meeting the scheduled start time, reopening time for school. I think there was a clear opportunity for the primary schools, for grades 4 and 6, grade 5 and 6, sorry, to start, and also for forms 4s and form 5s to start. Just for this term, and you can stagger it and incrementally bring in the other classes as the improvements increase within the school setting. And the reason for that is because of the similar challenges that they are having now, not being able to house the entire classes or the entire school in its entirety because of challenges with water, challenges with meal arrangements. So those are some of the things that I believe they overlooked, and hence why they're having those challenges now. So you have to understand, it's not a matter of you just rushing to prove Cox wrong that you could open schools on the 30th of September. That's not what it should be. But you should take an action to ensure that the best approach can be met so that persons can have a comfortable setting for school to start. So I believe that this term should have just been the important classes, the grade 5 to grade 6, and the grade 4, form 4s and form 5s for the secondary schools. And then you can add classes as conditions improve. And so that was my suggestion. And that was tied into having the shelters cleared out in a timely manner, move persons to the Dumfries low income housing, and so that the shelters could have been opened up, which they eventually did, because, and they still had to do that to get school reopened. So I didn't know what was the delay initially. They may have had a good reason for the delay, but it was not really mentioned. So that would have been my suggestion as to how we can approach it.
And of course, we saw a posting by the president of the Grenada Union of Teachers on a visit to Carriacou, owing to students who were housed. I'm not too sure what particular institution. I don't believe his live stream mentioned it.
That's close to where I live, so I can tell you. It's the Winner Preschool.
Yes.
However, yes, they would have some challenges with heat because the first thing is that the tents were located on site in a bad place, in the sense that it was placed behind the preschool. So the winds coming in the northeast trade winds were being blocked by the preschool itself. So the kids in the tent, they are going to not be able to access those winds coming in, so the tents are going to be hot. And additionally, when the sun goes down in the evening, they are going to feel the brunt of it 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock sun. So the tents should have not been placed at the back of that school, but to the front of the school. So that was an error in terms of the locating the tents. So that's what the challenge was, from my assessment.
And are there other institutions in Carriacou that are similarly, educational institutions that are similarly retrofitted with tents? Or is that the only one?
Mount Pleasant Government School do have tents. But there is an indication that where they are, they indicated that they are very close to the seafront. So whatever prevailing breeze, they would get it. So they're probably not feeling as hot. While Winner Preschool is close to the waterfront, but where the tents were located, it's preventing the students and teachers from getting the prevailing breeze to kind of cool on the tents. The tents are going to be hot during the course of the day. They're going to pick up heat and it will attract heat. But if you have some cool breeze coming through, there's a likelihood that it may be able to stabilize and they can have some degree of class with some comfort during the course of the day.
So what I hear you saying here is not so much an issue of the actual tents, but perhaps how the tents were situated, or are you saying that perhaps the tent should not have been?
The tents is really probably not the best option, but if you're using it, you have to make sure that it's located properly because it will attract heat. It will attract some heat. We have observed our colleagues in our neighboring islands. They build temporary schools. So that in itself
on the mainland in St. Vincent.
Yes, yes, that would have been a better option to do a temporary school. I recently learned that there was a meeting with parents for the Dover Government School, and a decision was taken to do a temporary building for Dover School. Hopefully they can get it done for January. That is what they're aiming to have it done. But they're aiming to do it on the Dover School site, the old Dover School site, which again, I think is not probably the best decision. Because there are two challenges. One, that site is currently an official dump site, the Dover School site. So there's large amounts of garbage there, which will have to be removed before any school setting is established there. And secondly, going forward, the school, when they have to rebuild the school, that area will become a construction site. Then again, that will pose a challenge for the temporary school being there. Even if it's not close in terms of proximity. But once you have construction, there are going to be noise, there are going to be dust, there are going to be challenges. You don't want to put kids in a setting like that. So my suggestion would be for that temporary school to be built in Wynwood by the Winner Preschool in the interim, and you just keep the Dover School site sterile and ready and prepped for construction as soon as the government can do so from a financial standpoint.
Yeah. So speaking of housing school students, let us get to the other issue here, which is the state of the Chinese-funded housing. During Beryl, of course, we heard stories that during Beryl that security turned away citizens who were trying to be sheltered from the batterings of the storm. And we do know that in the context of this new administration's housing approach, they're saying that they are, going through a new process of housing citizens in some of those newly constructed houses. I know that folks have applied for financing because they're saying that you have to go to private institutions to get financing in order to be able to occupy those houses. But our understanding is that those houses were also used by members of the Guyana Defense Force and other relief personnel from the Caribbean Electricity Services. What's the current state of the housing now that those folks have since gone? Are citizens now able to move into those houses? Where are we? What are you hearing on the ground in respect of that issue?
Well, from what I do know is that those housing were used for, of course, yes, persons from Carriacou who came in to assist with the electricity rebuilding process, restoration process. And what was sad is that at that time, that local residents were denied an opportunity to shelter there, while you have persons from Carriacou staying there, and there was an excuse given that the place was in no condition to be livable, but at the same time you had persons living there. So it didn't send a good message. I think there was a clear opportunity to give a more genuine and honest explanation of why they probably didn't want residents there, but to say that it was not livable, it was incorrect because you had persons living there. Those guys, I think there is a small core group of them that are still on island. I'm not sure if they're living there. If so, they're probably there. But the government has since then taken a decision to allow residents to move in there. So some residents are there. I don't know the numbers. Some persons went in there before, and some persons went there, came from the shelters, and are actually currently residing at the housing. So in end, they did come around and took the suggestion, not just of myself, but many other people who felt that that was a decision they should have taken a while back.
Absolutely. And I know that what your party's approach is in respect of the housing, that it was earmarked not in the way as to have citizens finance loans from the bank. Now, the administration would say that what they're doing is that they're giving people an opportunity to build equity while paying over time for the housing at very reasonable interest rates, not the market rates, if you will. But I don't know how that's going to work out if you're going to a commercial.
I think it's a challenge. You know, it's a challenge, and I think the government has not really looked at the housing situation from a practical standpoint in terms of affordability and access. And to change from a low-income housing, you change that to a condominium concept. I think what it does, it immediately removes access for some people. Immediately, from the time you do that, there are some persons who are not going to be able to access those, and persons who may be able to access. The question is, are they able to pay for it now? Even for Carriacou in the situation where what is taking place in Carriacou right now, some persons who have challenges and how the economy has become a much slower for businesses and less jobs. So it's a challenge for a lot of people. So I think that is something that they have to relook. They need to reconsider that and probably take a different approach for Carriacou going forward now, given our current situation. That would be my recommendation. I think the Prime Minister has a clear opportunity to do that, and Carriacou deserves that.
Now, folks on your side, during the announcement of the CRIF payouts, and of course there was a back and forth as to when Grenada joined the CRIF, and like Grenada joined the CRIF 2 years ago, and whether Grenlec and this one, and was just this very, shall we say, infantile back and forth, right? But also on your side, Senator Cox, there were those who were saying that, well, a lot of that insurance money should have been made available to private homeowners so that they can rebuild their homes, when in fact the CRIF payout ought to be used, at least in my understanding of it, within the macroeconomic framework of reconstruction. So can you clarify what should be the understanding of the CRIF insurance payout? Can it be used for private housing reconstruction or not?
Okay, so I'm very happy that you raised this question, and that is a particular issue which I have not really spoken about previously. I did mention it briefly at the Parliament level, but it's something that I wanted to go deeply into. And it's a clear misinformation regarding the CRIF. And I had an opportunity to assess further, I had an opportunity to research further on the CRIF. And basically, what I'm going to say is basically what the CRIF has published. And the purpose of the CRIF is to really fill the liquidity gap for countries to quickly respond to catastrophes. And so, be it tropical cyclones, earthquakes, excessive rainfalls. They have included recently utility companies like water and electricity, and also the fisheries and tourism sector. They are also included now. All right. So that is what it covers. Now, the CRIF specifically, and they tie themselves to a 14-day payout that they have met thus far. So every country that has gone through some catastrophe and they're deemed to be able to qualify for compensation, they have made those payments in 14 days. Yeah, and so that is pretty impressive. And the reason for that is for those countries like Grenada and Carriacou and Petite Martinique to quickly respond to relief measures. I mean, 14 days after a hurricane you have access to over $100 million. I think that is quite amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at what you can utilize those funds for, and I'm calling out a list here, Dr. Bob, and that's a list from CRIF. That's a list from CRIF, and that can be verified on CRIF website.
Mm-hmm.
And the list starts with things that the government have used the funds for previously: for food, for shelter, for medicine, building materials to affected persons. I want to repeat this one: building materials to affected persons. It goes on to agriculture, fisheries, a number of other things. Also, even early warning systems, infrastructure, roads, drains, bridges. So the purpose in which you can use the funds for is not confined. There is no restraint put on countries to respond in that regard. So I don't know. I did heard this thing about this macroeconomic response only, but that is not what CRIF has published. That is what they have published, and I'm happy that you read that because I read it.
Yes, yes, but just to push back again, I'm not representing the administration. I'm playing devil's advocate. That is my role here. I only. There are a few colors that I associate with. I'm not going to talk about those colors here on the Bubb Report. It's not the place to do that, sir. Not green and yellow. But the point is, Senator, in all seriousness, we did have a supplementary budget. A lot of the supplementary budget is being funded by the CRIF payout.
Not necessarily. I wish I had there was some specific. The government didn't indicate that those funds came from CRIF. Yeah, they didn't indicate that. Some of the funding was grant funding. Some of it was specifically from grant funding from the EU. I think some of the specific ones for CRIF was mentioned through a project, I think, under the Ministry of Climate Resilience, if I could quickly recall. So they have not indicated such directly to say that these are the monies from CRIF. I didn't hear that. What I did hear some time back, somebody from the government official indicating that the countries, the economy is performing so well that they don't have to go out and ask for funds, and they're gonna able to get monies. That the economy is doing well. They have monies from CBI, and they're gonna respond. So I think that is what I heard, but they have not specifically said that this is how the CRIF money have been allocated. We have asked for it unofficially, but I believe that it's something that maybe we as an opposition may have to ask for officially through the parliament going forward to state how these monies were spent. Because you remember, Grand Lake received the 9 million US, which is about 25 million EC dollars. Now also received about almost 6 million EC dollars, and the government received 118. So about $150 million EC would have come into the Grenadian economy in that regard, if you want to put it like that. So, but they have not specifically indicated that is the case. Yeah. So until such, I can't say where those monies actually came from. We can't say.
In respect of I'm going to definitely look up because we had a program a couple of weeks ago with Ambrose Philip et al. Where we were examining line by line the various votes in the estimate, and I believe CRIF is mentioned, but I can.
It's mentioned under climate resilience.
It is mentioned. So it is. Yes. So the point I'm making is that it is mentioned in the votes for the supplementary estimates
for a particular budget item, not for the entire sum, and that is the point that I'm making. Yes. So it's not for the entire sum. It's for a particular allocation under climate resilience and
under climate resilience.
And I don't think that is something that they could have avoided. That those monies were tailored basically for that, so that you couldn't divert it to anything else. But the $118 million, clearly, that in itself, government has the prerogative to use it within the confines, the context of response and relief for grieving things.
Mhm. Now let us talk about the Build Back Better program, much touted by the Minister of Implementation, Mobilization, Implementation, and Transformation. In fact, the minister was able to articulate the fact that a model home was constructed that, of course, within the context of that model home, it was expected to meet particular climate resilience standards moving forward in the way that it's designed. Externally, it would meet a particular facade that represents the built environment of Grenada, but internally, it will be constructed in such a way as to withstand some of the hurricane force winds that we are now expected to confront. I mean, we are seeing those storms with greater intensity and ferocity. Now, are you able to articulate your party's position on these particular Build Back Better homes, which, of course, are different from the Project 500 housing project that the administration already had down the pike before Hurricane Beryl?
Well, first of all, a couple of things I want to share with it. So first of all, the model. I was somewhat surprised to learn that the model was not erected in the core targeted communities where the actual homes are going to be built. I thought it would be more prudent and convenient to have the model homes there in one of those communities, and so that persons can see and just easily go and walk and access the model to see what it looked like, and so they can replicate, not necessarily through the government, but they could replicate for themselves. But that is not the case. I understand the module is somewhere in grants. Probably if
it's in the minister's constituency, and perhaps if he appeared on the Bubb Report, he might
he could have given a justification for it.
He could have given accounting as to why it was there and not in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. But Minister Williams, if you're listening,
I didn't
yes, go ahead.
I was more leaning towards St. Patrick's because that is where the project was earmarked, but it was launched in St. Patrick's. And initially, the 200 homes were earmarked for St. Patrick's and St. Mark's and none for Carriacou and Petite Martinique. It is only until after we ventilated at the Parliament and also in the public domain, trying to get a sense as to why 200 homes are allocated for St. Mark's and St. Patrick's and none for Carriacou and Petite Martinique through that said program. Since then, it has changed, and we welcome that. So I just want to indicate that. And additionally, we had also flagged the issue in terms of the budgeting, in terms of why this gap that was not accounted for, because it was 200 homes at $50,000 per home with $5 million unaccounted for. Then we heard later $70,000 per home. That still will not fill that gap. So I believe that those extra monies they are budgeted for a particular purpose, but I think the government choose not to say what the allocation was meant for. That is my belief.
Absolutely. And so, in respect of those houses, what work have you been seeing on the ground in respect of? Again, the MIT minister indicated that they wanted to construct as I can't remember the exact number, but they wanted to meet a particular target of construction by the end of the year.
So there are reports. I've heard reports and seen reports indicating that they're aiming to construct 50 houses by Christmas, 50 homes. I think that would be wonderful if that can be achieved. That would mean 50 families who are affected. I do hope that Petite Martinique is including that 50 as well. I think it would be very, very important and instructive for Petite Martinique to be including that 50. There were reports also that 8 of those homes have started. Maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I heard 8 of those homes have started. I know of one, I pass one every day, just right in Hillsborough and Hillsborough Main Road. So that one is ongoing. We wait to see the final product. And Dr. Bob, it's not so much about me, but it's more about the people. They are the ones who have been affected. and really and truly, everything that we're trying to do is to ensure that it brings some resolve, it brings some appeasement to them who are affected at this current time. That is what this whole discourse and dialogue is about.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, housing, of course, is a systemic challenge for Grenada. This is not, and I'm sure that
But just to cut you, there was one thing that I wanted to mention regarding
yes, sir.
the brief, which is very critical and which is currently happening. I know that the government has reached out to the fishing community and asked for the credentials or so to make some direct payouts to fishermen who lost their boat in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. I think also on the mainland as well. However, and that is where the challenge is not so for me, but for the fishermen. And I choose this platform to speak and to call, Up to recently last night, I've been speaking with some of the fishermen, and they say that they have been going to their respective banks or credit union for the last month or so, and they keep telling them the money is been deposited, and every time they go, it's not there. As recent as Friday. So let me say this. I think yes, there is a plan to make these payouts, but I don't think that they ought to be sending persons to the bank to know that the funds are not ready. There is no need to do that, to create that inconvenience for persons. Ensure that everything is there. You can call the bank to verify to make sure the money is there. So when you have people going backward and forward, this is not nice. This is not nice. And persons are losing confidence and hope, that they are going to get the help that they're so desperately need. I don't know why you have to keep telling people every Friday to the bank and you're not checking that the funds are there. But I don't know why that's been done. It's just untidy.
And speaking of pay, of course, the teachers are continuing to clamor for their own comeuppance in respect of the teachers who were not paid. That as well. Again, there is a debate as to whether or not this has been done by lower level public servants in the system who are trying to sabotage the administration. Again, that was debunked by Minister Andy Williams in the press conference that he had with the other officials from the ministry. So we do know that it's not a case of sabotage as is articulated by some, but just perhaps, Senator Cox, the way that our public service is set up. For example, I was not aware until last week that the Public Service Commission only meets once a month, I believe. And they're the ones who have to approve payments and things like that. So perhaps it's an issue just of the way that the structure is set up. The public service structure.
No, the Public Service Commission, and not necessarily payments per se. It is more of the employment aspect. Which includes, of course, your remuneration in terms of your terms and conditions of the employment. So if there are contracts to be renewed, certain level of contracts, certain type of contracts would go to the commission. Some would not necessarily have to go to the commission. So I mean, if this process is one that reoccurs annually or every cycle, whatever cycle it is, I think it's incumbent upon the government to ensure that the necessary measures are put in place to ensure that it is done. I'm not saying that we can't have a shortfall, but it has been weeks now, and to me, it's like every week, same thing with the fishermen. Every Friday, you're saying that teachers are going to get the money this Friday, and then it goes on to the next Friday, and the next Friday. So I don't know. I'm just somewhat confused, because if you send a payment to a bank, I mean, you ought to make sure that it is there before you tell the person to go for it. So I'm really confused. I don't know why would you give people the impression that the funds are there and it's not there. Then you come back and you say that is the worker. You have to make sure that it is there before you give indications to go. I mean, it's just as simple as that. I mean, yes, there are challenges. You have a challenge, you have a hiccup. Fine. I mean, I am not saying that you cannot have an issue. I'm not saying that you can have a breakdown in administration, in administrative issues, or delays, things happen. And the government is dynamic and things can happen. But I don't understand why the schedule, the timeline for payment keep moving, keep shifting. That is what that is the part that I'm really lost about.
Senator Cox, that is a space that we will certainly be watching. But viewers and listeners, what we want to do now is to take a quick break and come back with Senator Cox. Again, if you're just joining us, you might be surprised that we only have one guest this morning. But the guest advertised, that's Minister Andy Williams, Minister responsible for mobilization, implementation, and transformation. He communicated through the press secretary this morning that he will not be able to join the platform. So join today's program, that is. So viewers and listeners, please stand by. We're going to take a quick break and come back with more with Senator Nolan Cox. Please stand by.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me here for much more than diplomatic passports. I don't buy that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this. So I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching. And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. We will continue our conversation with Senator the Honorable Nolan Cox, who is, I want to get your title correctly, sir, because I believe that there were some recent changes. You are the political lead for Carriacou and Petite Martinique on behalf of the opposition New National Party. Now, in the immediate aftermath of Beryl, many people reached out to us, including some in the yachting community, about sort of a deteriorating security situation on the island, where they complained about some robberies and vandalism that occurred there. Can you articulate what the security situation looks like now? Or was that par for the course in respect of just what happens after disasters? We saw that in Grenada as well. After Hurricane Ivan, there were many acts of looting that occurred. We always see that in disaster zones. And I suspect that Carriacou was not immune from that.
That is correct, Dr. Bubb. We do. Unfortunately, we had some characterization of looting taking place right in the aftermath of the hurricane. Unfortunately, and it didn't sustain that long. It was just for a short time frame. But I cannot say currently now that we do have that prevailing situation taking place. I wouldn't say that is the case. And there might be localized acts of maybe pilfering or so. Maybe in the case of materials, persons looking for materials to even to build something temporarily may go some way and take up some materials from some place that is damaged or something else. So some of those things, it is likely that will occur. But to say that there is a major security issue on island currently, I would say no. That is not the case. I do not feel in any way unsafe or in any form at my home. At one point in time, we were sleeping in the house without windows. So there were actually windows you can just stretch inside or just climb in, So, and there are some persons who are still in that situation. I mean, I have, so I could tell you that no, I haven't felt that way. Yeah.
Okay. So that has improved there significantly, which is good because Carriacou historically is not known as having any incidences of that type. And if it does happen, it's once in a very, very blue moon, a very rare occurrence in many respects. Now, Senator Cox, in our attempts at putting this program together, one of the underlying themes that we observed was a reluctance by some in Carriacou to come forward to speak on some of the post-Beryl recovery issues, with some expressing the view that perhaps if they spoke out that either they would be bullied or gaslit by those sympathetic to the administration. Is there a move to victimize, in your view, people who might express divergent opinions or divergent views in respect of the recovery process in Carriacou?
It's a very sensitive time for Carriacouans currently, especially those who are affected. And yes, there is a deep sense of persons who feel somewhat cautious. They're very cautious in what they do for fear that they may not be able to access support from government. If they were to say how they feel or what is really taking place, or maybe express a dissatisfaction about a particular issue or process or so, because they would have seen and heard what would have happened to other persons. So that in itself is a challenge. And person would have called up to me and tell me, look, I really don't want to be doing certain things. In some cases, some people went as far as not even want to be seen, even talking to me. It doesn't matter the conversation, but for fear that it might affect them from being able to receive support. And that is the unfortunate part of what is happening for me. And I've spoken about it in other circles, that there is not a need for that. It's a perfect opportunity for the government to respond to Carriacouans and Petite Martiniquans alike. I mean, in a genuine way, to just help everybody in need. I mean, when you stand up and you look, you don't see, NBC or NMP roof. I mean, just all roofs are off. People are on the tarpaulins. Persons are challenged for water right now. You just have to find a way to just help. Everything that comes, you have to scrutinize. Will this person do? Will this person end? There's a clear opportunity for the government to really look outstanding during this process, and they have really dropped the ball on that. They have missed that opportunity. Maybe they can change course and fix it going forward, but they have really changed course in that regard. Yeah, so but that is how some people feel. I'm not saying that they probably wouldn't have helped somebody who might be sympathetic to NMP, but the sense and the feeling on the ground, and you yourself even without talking to me, you yourself would have gotten feedback in that regard. So I don't want it to be said that it's like it's something political, just something that I am saying, but that is how people actually feel. And the government or the persons in authority have to find a way to remove that sense of feeling, that sense of distrust in that regard. That person don't feel comfortable in that regard for fear that they may not benefit from something that they are deserving of, which is state funds and it's state funds. So I think that is the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I don't know if this is a systemic issue because even under your administration, there were also concerns over speaking out. But what I would say is that, in the context of this platform, there were also people who, and maybe it's just the way that the system is designed, where people are afraid. It might be a function of who is in power at any given time, and perhaps that is something that we need to deviate from. But Senator Cox, speaking of free speech, at the NNP General Council, in which you gave a very, I've never seen you were very animated at the General Council. I wonder why is that? Is Dr. Mitchell rubbing off on you, sir?
I find I was very calm. I just find I was just in my calm nature. I didn't find anything strange or different about my posture. Well, I probably need to look at the video again.
Maybe I need to look at it again.
Yeah.
But in the context of the convention, sir, not the convention, the General Council, no date has been set for the convention yet. But you did mention, you did wade into the debate on Mr. Clouden. Obviously, what happened to Mr. Clouden in Carriacou and Petite Martinique was indeed very unfortunate. And if we are to accord any national hero status this year, I believe it should be to Mr. Clouden and to members of the Carriacou diaspora community who gave yeoman service to recovery in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. But there was a statement you made there in which there was a particular blogger. Again, I don't follow these social media bloggers. But there is a statement that you made there, Senator Cox, in which you accused the administration of arresting him, of him being arrested for expressing his free speech over concerns in ways in which Mr. Clouden was handled at the General Hospital. Is that a statement, Senator Cox, that you regret, or did you say that in jest, or because obviously that was not why the gentleman was arrested?
Let me explain, and I'm happy that you raised that, but it has nothing to do. I mentioned Clouden, and the person who was referred to by the blogger is not Mr. Clouden. It's a different person. Yeah.
Oh, it's a different person. So, thanks for that correction. Yeah. Yes.
So the only name that I did mention in my utterances was Mr. Clouden for obvious reasons. A good friend of mine, and he was in a particular situation. I just felt compelled to just raise that at that point in time, not really thinking about the chain of reactions, what would have happened in terms of the support. All the members who were there at the General Council at the same time raised over $3,000 right there. So that was just like spontaneous.
Yes.
That was quite outstanding. Yeah?
And very commendable, of course.
Yes. So on the other matter, and it's for obvious reasons, I did not mention any name in my address except for Mr. Clouden.
Yes.
And I was making the point, the wider point, all right, as to what we just spoke about persons having that fear for coming forward to speak because of them being attacked. Yeah. And so reference was made to a particular incident and not in the context of what transpired. I don't know anything about what that gentleman was arrested for. So I was surprised when I heard my comments was linked to that particular incident, which I knew I had no knowledge of. So it was an assumption because what happened at the time I made the statement, that particular individual, I think, raised up and there was some big animation, some rockers took place on the floor at the same time. So it felt as if that was linked to that person, but it linked to other incidents. There were other incidents where not just for that particular person, but not that for that particular person, but wasn't for that said incident because I knew nothing of that incident. So there's no way that I could have made a reference to a particular incident without knowing anything about it. And so this is the first time I've really spoken about it because
well, that's what we do here on the Bubb Report, because I think it's very important for us to go to the horse's mouth, which in this case it's your mouth here.
And then it's later that I learned that the incident, I think it was maybe about 3 years old or something like that, for some violation or the stuff. And so that even begs into question, you know, if it's something that is 3 years old, why is it coming up? But that has to do with it because I don't know what the incident is about, and I never really made reference to that. But I knew in what context that I made that statement, and so I didn't say.
So what was it? What context did you make that statement in, sir?
No, as I said, there are other incidents which I don't want to speak in particular, and then for reasons more than one, which I didn't go in detail, but I was used it as an example for the wider context of what is taking place. Yes, issues and what you explain, what you experience, which was a fact, which is a fact based on what you're saying. That person feel as if the whole issue of them being able to speak up is modeled, you know, in some way, modeled in some way. So it's within that context, I was making a point. Yeah. So, but you know, sometimes, Dr. Bob, one of the challenges for persons in the public space is that when you say something, how somebody interprets or understands it, sometimes you don't have control over it, but you have been led to be responsible for how somebody thinks or interprets what you say. So it's within that context I understand, but I didn't really worry about it because I didn't even know who is the individual up to this day. I don't even know who is the person, and I wasn't really bothered, but knowing because I knew in what context I was making my statement. It didn't have anything to do with that particular incident. I didn't know. I didn't know. I never even speak to the gentleman about it. I mean, we met afterwards, and he never even gave me any details about it either. Yeah, so that is the fact. Yeah, because I was not really interested in that because those are legal stuff. That is not my forte. I can't give any advice on a legal matter. So that's the reason why I never really prolonged it or had to go and respond because it wasn't in the context of what. But as you raise it now, I just did elaborating for what it's worth. But it's you know, I saw comments from people, you know, all kind of stuff. You know, so
you know, we live in this social media age, and you know, at least for my own mental health, I seldom read people's comments. There are a lot of things that are said about me out there as well. I
just want to say something in the context of that and what is happening. And I made a joke in my presentation that look, you know, they are going to find something about my address to say, and
which they did.
Yes, which they did. And for all the things that I said, all the important things that I spoke about, the issue of schools, the issue of housing, the people, the needs of the people, the challenges that are facing now. And for the only thing that you can draw out, you know, is just that little something you could find. I think, well, then I think I did a reasonably good job in terms of representing the views and the concerns of the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. And that is my way of summing up what really transpired. But people know me. People know who I am. I interact with people daily. I've lived in Carriacou almost all my life, except for the time when that period when I lived in Grenada while I was working as a minister of government. And so there is nothing that I can hide about myself that people don't know. People know who I am. They know my parents. They know how I interact. That people can. So I don't have to go out there to defend myself on social media about what somebody think or say or believe about me because I live around people every day and I'm confident. Persons know we interact, we laugh, we have fun. You know, some of my best friends are not supporters of the National Party, and some of them are classmates, and we interact every day. So we have good fun and we get along. They know where I am. I know where they are. We respect each other's political views, and we coexist. And so that is the reason why I don't ever bother. I don't ever bother.
Senator Cox, thanks for that response. Of course, that was not part of the substantive setup, but of course it came up in contemporary social media conversation. Some of those, I think it's important. And with the reason why we ask a lot of those questions, some people think that it may be unreasonable, but I think it's important to clear the air on a lot of issues. And that's what we try to do here.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, thank you for asking.
Yes, Senator Cox, yes, go ahead, finish your train of thought.
No, I'm fine. Yes, you go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. In respect of, and that will be the final issue because we have to get to our next guest. In respect of the new National Party, a general council was held, your political leader, very animated. Obviously, we articulated a lot of what he intimated at the convention in our previous episode, so we're not going to reinvent the wheel here. But can you reflect on the party's 40th anniversary? Of course, no date was set for the convention following the General Council, but where do you see the new National Party moving to beyond, at this particular 40-year mark in its history?
Dr. Bob, I just want to say, I mean, I'm very happy to be part of the National Party organization in terms of the philosophy and how we look at people and our view of development involving people as part of our development, and not just a certain segment, but everybody's development, the business, the working class, trying to ensure the persons who are in most need, trying to ensure that all policies are crafted in such a way to ensure that we meet the needs of all those sectors. In terms of the party going forward, as you know, with every political party, when you have transitioning process, it's going to be dynamic, and it is nothing new what is taking place, and we are very comfortable, as you can see from our meetings, our zonal meetings, how excited and energetic our supporters are. They have been coming out and supporting. We definitely, yes, we have not set a date for this convention because there are a number of moving parts, there are a number of things that is taking place, there are a number of things that we are doing and we are planning, a number of activities for 40th. In terms of Carriacou, we do have some activities planned. I'm not sure that we'll be able to get it off now because of the situation that we have. We may have to push it back into the new year. However, we are going to have it. I'll probably speak about it later, may not mention about it now, but we have some things that we want to do as part of our celebrations for Carriacou and Petite Martinique, of course. But I think in terms of what is taking place now, where we are, the kind of responses that we are getting, I'm happy. I'm happy. Yes, there's work, there's improvement. There's always improvement in terms of how we manage and our structure and everything. But that is not foreign to any organization. And so I'm looking forward to our party's success at the next general elections. And I'm very optimistic because I know that in terms of governance, our record is stellar in terms of governance and governing the country, especially in times of crisis. So I think we are very excited about that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Senator Cox, I'm going to offer you an opportunity for some closing comments.
Well, I want to touch on something quickly, which
Senator, go ahead.
I didn't mention, which is very important, and that has to do with the government, the fiscal measures that they have put in place to support the business community in Carriacou and Petite Martinique who were hit by the storm. And I just want to offer some suggestions to the Prime Minister in particular. He is the lead person in that regard. The measures, the intent is fine, but the measures, they are not going to be effective. The challenge that, for example, the soft loan scheme and grant, it's difficult for a person to access at this point in time, based on the terms and conditions. And if the Prime Minister really wants to help businesses in Carriacou to thrive and to recover, and which they really need the support, they need the help, they need to go back to the drawing board based on what they're offering to GDP right now. I think there's a clear opportunity to offer some grant support up front, some cash injection of a certain amount, and allow business to function, and then give them an opportunity to access the soft loan where they have to soften the conditions, the terms and conditions. It needs to be softened because persons are not going to be able to access it. And that is one of the things I really want to mention going forward. I think that is something that they need to look at. And it's not going to be heavily subscribed because, yes, people are going to apply for it, but I don't think that they're going to make it based on the terms and conditions that is set right now. So I just wanted to raise that and flag that as an issue. Even the concessions at the port and things like that, that has also been a challenge. That's also been a challenge. Persons who bringing in stuff, getting the concessions, that has been a challenge. Some persons were made to pay. Some persons got the concessions, so it has not been consistent. So I think it's something that they need to look into as well.
And that has to do with the Beryl program, the
Beryl program,
the Beryl
yes.
program
Yes.
from the United States. You're saying that
Yeah.
okay, so you're saying it's not consistently applied across the board for residents of Carriacou and Petite
And
Martinique.
also the issue with the VAT, with the hardware stores, and the removal of that has not worked smoothly. When some persons go to some of the hardware stores, they said, look, they haven't received anything from government, they don't know anything about that, so they have to pay the VAT. So I think there are some issues there that they really need to look into that. And I just raise it not as a criticism, but as an awareness of what is happening and some of the feedbacks that we are receiving, and for them to treat with it. Okay, I want to close by saying that, look,
yes, sir,
we do not want the government to fail in terms of the response for Petite Martinique and Carriacou, because if the government fails, then we are going to be in a more graver situation. So it doesn't make sense for us to want them to fail. But because of the lack of structure, lack of a clear plan for going forward, it seems that our recovery process is going to take longer than it should. And some of the challenges that we have now could be alleviated if the process is more structured. You have reports where you could call this person and get a black tan, and you could call that person and get a black tan. It depends on who you call. You could get 2. It depends on who you call. You could get 5. So it's a lot of stuff. I mean, I wouldn't go into that. No, those are a lot of the on the ground stuff. With distribution and stuff. I mean, and you would probably hear about it in your own circles. But I just say this to say that because of the lack of structure, you have those issues. And I think that it is going to muddle the whole process going forward. But in a general sense, it is, while I have my own assessment, it is left up to the people of Petite Martinique and Carriacou to say whether or not the recovery process the government is performing, their performance is by A+ or B or whatever the case may be. It is left up to the people who are actually receiving those services to do their personal assessment. But from my personal assessment, which I've indicated, the response has been very sluggish and somewhat disappointing in some cases. From a holistic standpoint, I'm not saying that they're not doing something, but from a holistic assessment, the general consensus is that persons are not satisfied with how things are going, and that is the general consensus on the ground. So I just want to say that. But before I close, I want to again to say for the families who would have lost loved ones during the passage of the storm, I accept my deepest condolences, and also persons who would have passed afterwards, not directly from the storm, but the after effects, the challenge, the stress. We also extend our condolences. So Carriacou is dealing with a lot currently, and for that we have to find a way to console and support each other at this point in time. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
Yeah, absolutely. We cannot forget the mental health trauma and the emotional trauma that comes with what happened in Beryl and what happens with all major storms. Imagine just losing a lot of what you've worked your entire life to build in the space of half a day, a couple hours, right? It's something that is extremely traumatizing to the psyche, and we must remember that. And of course, those who died during the storm, may they rest in peace and may their memories be a blessing. Senator Cox, thank you for appearing on this week's edition of the Bubb Report, sir.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure being here. I don't know when I'll return,
I do hope that you return after the new National Party's convention. Perhaps you might be the leader of the party. You never know.
You never know. You just never know.
But of course, please communicate to Dr. Mitchell that The invitation continues to remain open for him to appear on the Bubb Report. I'm not too sure why he continues to avoid us. I do know that he watches the program. So please communicate that the next time you see your boss, the political leader, Dr. Mitchell. And I say all of that.
I want to respond. I want to respond. That is your good friend. You guys will get together when the time is up. That's all I can say.
Senator Cox, thank you so much for your appearance on the Bubb Report this week, sir. All right, viewers and listeners, this is the Bubb Report. We were just speaking there with Senator Nolan Cox. He is the political lead for the constituency of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, in which he offered his own perspective in respect to what has been happening in Carriacou and Petite Martinique by assessing the post-Beryl recovery efforts treated to by the Government of Grenada. Of course, the government side was also invited in the interest of balance. This is what we do here on the Bubb Report, but no guest. The guest that originally agreed to appear, they canceled on us this morning. And so we're left with, that's Senator Cox from Carriacou. So viewers and listeners, what we're going to do is that we're going to take a quick break now, and we are going to come back with a very interesting conversation. Now, first and foremost, over in Martinique, there is, of course, that's what, 3 or 4 islands north of Grenada. There are significant political unrests happening there as a result of a cost of living crisis in that overseas French department. Many of us, perhaps that's not on our radar, but the airport in Martinique has been shut down as a result, temporarily shut down. Food supermarkets have been destroyed. Cars have been destroyed. France actually sent a paramilitary force to quell a lot of the riots, some of which is being led by a protest leader who was once imprisoned in Martinique. He's a very popular figure there. But there is mayhem and anarchy, and that, of course, has a lot of regional security implications for the rest of the Caribbean. We were hoping to be joined by Ms. Caroline Popovich, who is a journalist covering that issue with France TV, but she herself has some internet issues in her location. But we do have a segment in which the final segment of the day will be speaking of a Vibes Cartel and his promotion of St. Vincent and the Grenadines tourism, which has sparked outcry in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we'll be joined by Mr. Jomo Thomas, who will be giving us an update on that issue that's occurring in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So please stand by for the second segment of the program. And viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. We are happy that you can stay with us. Now, over in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves says that the presence of Jamaican dancehall artist Vybz Kartel in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a personal act of mercy. Kartel, who was recently released from prison after 13 years on a murder charge, has been making frequent visits to St. Vincent and the Grenadines for treatment related to his grave disease diagnosis, also known as hyperthyroidism. Now, since his arrival at the Argyle International Airport on board a private jet that was in August, several videos have circulated on social media documenting the artist's trip to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. One of the videos shows Kartel seated at a dining table along with Gonsalves and his wife and other people, apparently at the official residence of the Prime Minister. That's the official residence of Prime Minister Gonsalves. Now, Prime Minister Gonsalves, speaking in one of his weekly radio programs on the state-owned NBC radio, said he received a telephone call from Kartel's lawyer a couple weeks before Kartel arrived in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, advising him of his intention to visit the island. One man, however, is not excited with Kartel's bromance with Dr. Gonsalves. Former House Speaker of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines House of Assembly, Attorney Jomo Sanga Thomas, says of the bromance, quote, Vybz Kartel is widely popular with youth across the world. He is a skilled dancehall artist, he writes well, and his catchy lyrics delivered over a rhythmic vibe have captivated many. But is he the model we want to hold up to our youth? Vybz Kartel is a notorious user of skin bleaching solutions. The level of self-hatred depicted in such a despicable practice is revolting and nauseating. Those are Thomas's words, not my words. If you think marketing works, as the government says, let's pay the Nigerian sensation Burna Boy to come to our shores. He has 18 million X and Instagram followers, and none of the notorious baggage that weighs down Vybz Kartel, unquote. I'm now happy to be joined for this segment by Jomo Sanga Thomas. Jomo, welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report, sir. You need to unmute your mic there. Just unmute your mic, sir. Oh, I think we lost you there for a second. We are going to endeavor to get... there you are. The mic is still muted.
I don't know.
Well, there you are. No, just hold on. This thing is playing games with me here. Okay, go ahead.
Yes,
I think we can.
The mic is unmuted now.
Excellent, excellent. Go ahead, sir.
I was saying.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's good. It's good to be on.
Yes, sir.
I was saying that I am a tech peasant, so sometimes when these phones or computer do anything funny, I have to call in assistance. But I was able to maneuver this one. Yeah. Well, the Vybz Kartel story has passed. You know, I think he was released from the Jamaican prison on July 13th. And within a few weeks, he was in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Prime Minister Gonzalez said it was an act of mercy. And I don't think that any of us had any difficulty with Vibes Cartel coming to St. Vincent. Vibes Cartel could go to wherever he wants to go. What a lot of people, including myself, was really irate about is the red carpet which the Prime Minister and the ULP government and the governing party laid down for Vibes Cartel. We thought it was perverse, quite frankly. This was a man who had just been released from prison after spending 13 years. It is true that his conviction was overturned by the Privy Council on a technicality. It had not to do with his guilt or innocence. It had to do with errors made by the judge in allowing a jury to continue its deliberation, even though there was a clear tint. There was somebody in that on the jury pool who had attempted to bribe all of the other jurors. So that was the ground upon which. So when he came to St. Vincent and then he was seen whining and dining with the Prime Minister and his wife, he was seen in some room. I did say that it was cabinet room. There was some pushback. They said it was not cabinet room. Hopefully, if it's not cabinet room, the only other room I can think about in that building that appears that way would be the press room in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Whatever room it was in an official setting. And what compounded it is that later on, Vibes Cartel was seen in an official St. Vincent tourism promotion, talking about what St. Vincent, people should come to St. Vincent. And I personally didn't think that Vibes Cartel should be the face of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that was the context in which I wrote the piece that you read excerpts from.
Yes, yeah. But some may say that while he was released on a technicality, that he paid his dues, and therefore, if St. Vincent and the Grenadines wants to use a formidable, the star power of a formidable dancehall artist in the region to promote its tourism, then that is fair game.
Well, in fact, that's what some of the people, including officials and their propagandists, their communicators, their influencers try to say. Look, Vibes Cartel is a big deal. Vibes Cartel has all of these Instagram followers. And that was my pushback. I said, if you really need somebody with star power, who had more power than Vibes Cartel by a magnitude of 6, bring Burna Boy. Let him come and hang out for a while. Let him showcase St. Vincent. Take him up to La Soufrière. Take him to some of the nice tourism spots. Pay him some money, and let's see what would come of that. But I think that there's this view that the mere appearance of some superstar, whether sports or entertainment, would have an overwhelming benefit for a given country. I'm not sure that that's the case. Certain countries are historical tourism destinations. So Barbados has been a destination, particularly for British people, for centuries. Bermuda has been the same. Yeah? And I'm talking here destinations in the Caribbean. Jamaica has been like that. The other countries are trying to get into mass tourism, and they have to find their way. I mean, St. Vincent, like Grenada, like St. Lucia, like every other country in the Caribbean, are exceptionally beautiful. We have to find ways to market. But I don't think whether we need to go to the bottom of the barrel to say that we are going to deal with, to have someone promote our tourism who is so notorious in a notorious in a very, very negative way. This is a man who had just come off a conviction for the killing of someone else. And the evidence in the case was pretty solid. The evidence in the case was that there was, the man was seen last at his house, and that there was some telephonic information on his phone which talked about how the man was disposed. and whether the authorities would be able to find the man and so on and so forth. That was the kind of evidence I read against it. I know there were questions about the authenticity of the the chain of custody of the phone and so on and so forth, which people like me as a defense, criminal defense, would exploit in any trial, which I think was properly exploited in that trial. But the fact of the matter is that that was the evidence. So I certainly wouldn't want him to be hanging out with any of my 3 daughters. I wouldn't want him to be promoting St. Vincent and and that's the point I was making. And I think the vast majority of the Vincentians agreed with that position.
Now, in the article, I'm going to quote from the article now. You said, quote, while each leader accepted the Privy Council's decision, and you're referencing here CARICOM leaders, Caribbean leaders, and expressed confidence in the rule of law, both party leaders, meaning I believe those are the party leaders
in
of Jamaica. Golden and Wholeness, right? Kept a respectable distance from cartel. You went on to say it is doubtful that Mayor Motley, Keith Rowley, Deacon Mitchell, or any other regional leader would have cuddled Vibes Cartel as Gonzalez did. Then you go on to say a Jamaican colleague texted, quote, I heard you guys are entertaining Mr. Cartel in your country. I would not do that if I were you. All this man brings is mass chaos. By the way, if all you want him, keep him, unquote. Which really speaks to a lot of what you're saying, that a lot of leaders accept Ralph Gonzalez, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez in St. Vincent. He's the only one that embraced him. But do you think that perhaps it's a political strategy on the part of the ULP, perhaps to appeal to a new generation of voters? Because let us be real, younger Caribbean citizens, they like the dance hall, they like the Cayman Six, the Trinidad. I told you about Trinidad music today.
Yes.
You said, heard of Trinidad? That's a new genre of Trinidad, of dance hall, shall we say, Southern Caribbean dance hall, the type of gunman in your hole type of, sorry to use that crass language, but that's the type of thing that the young people are listening. That's what they're gravitating towards.
Yeah. Look, politicians across the region have made good currency of popular Caribbean artists in election time. Across the region, St. Vincent, we have had them all, by both parties. And more so by the governing ruling party of Prime Minister Gonzalez. Any of the top artists, soca or otherwise, in the soca, reggae, or dancer in the region would have been here in St. Vincent for elections. But I think that our youth are much more conscious than we give them credit for. And I saw it graphically when I contested back in 2015. Youths would have 2 shirts, or probably 4. They would have 2 yellow shirts for the opposition and 2 red shirts for the governing party. And if the governing party has a concert or a meeting and there's a big artist, they put on the yellow shirt because they want to hear that artist. If the ULP has a concert and there's a popular artist, they go and they put on the red shirt. But that does not necessarily mean that young person is going to vote for the party who brought the most popular artists. I think that sometimes political parties tend to waste their money a lot, spending hundreds of thousands. I don't know how much money they spend. But rather than do the hard work and the hard grind, I think they underestimate our youth and simply say, all right, we bring Burna Boy, we bring Rihanna, we bring Michael Jackson, we bring whoever we can bring, with the hope that young people are going to go out to see them, or people will come to see them, and as a consequence, they're going to vote. That has not been happening. I don't think that. Maybe that might have happened in the early 2000s, but certainly in the third decade of the 21st century, I think that has less currency than before.
Interesting. And then you go on to talk about, for example, Queen Ifrica, again, she talks about admonishing him, to change and to refrain. But has he given any indication that he's going to return to his old ways? Again, this man spent a long time in prison, and certainly the Caribbean is supposed to be this Christian societies. Again, it's a constitutional, they're constitutional democracies. There's supposed to be separation of church and state. That's what I believe. Christian societies are theocratic societies. But that aside, why can't you give this man a shot of redemption? Maybe he would start doing like Marion Hall, lady saw who started singing gospel. Again, I do not hear any grace in your musings, is what I'm saying, Comrade Jomo.
No. But my point is that's why I quoted Queen Ifrica, because Queen Ifrica was talking about what he was saying and what he and his people were saying on his release. And our point was that, look, brother, you just spent all of these years and you're gone back to the same things, or saying the same things, liming with the same crowd and doing the same kind of things that sent you into prison. And that was a cautionary tale from Queen Ifrica. The other point I want to make is that when Vybz Kartel came to St. Vincent, he did in the end, there was a press conference where he told people, well, look, prisons is not a 5-star hotel. Yeah. But it was quite interesting that at that sit-in where he was talking about that, it was mostly women. In St. Vincent, we have like about 400 and something prisoners, and I don't think we have 15 women. So the audience, it seems to me, was wrong. Why didn't he take them to why wasn't he taken to the prisons where there are all of these men? And we have 2 prisons here now, the old colonial prison and new one, which was built like about 10 or 15 years ago. But we have upwards of 400, mostly young men, 1/3 of whom are imprisoned for homicides, for murders, or manslaughters. To me, that was the audience. But in addition to that is the fact that it took a good week of pushback on social media for the Prime Minister and his entourage to move away from the this celebrating red carpet of Vybz Kartel to give him an audience with people talking about his experience and so on. So that was what was wrong. And I'll tell you something else. If these guys were really serious about the story, the person whom they should have profiled should really have been ISAT. I forget, his name eludes me now. His Vybz Kartel's lawyer. Because Vybz Kartel's lawyer had some difficulties with the law, had gone to a federal prison in the United States and spent like about 8 or 9 years, and turned his life around, came back, is now practicing in Jamaica and doing excellent human rights constitutional work. But he was not given any play at all in St. Vincent. The only thing I saw for him was where he was interviewing the Prime Minister of St. Vincent. This lawyer interviewing the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, bigging him up about how he's this regional giant. So it was clearly used for political purposes rather than to really assist our young people to see, look, here's a positive example. Isaac Buchanan is his last name. Isaac Buchanan, the lawyer. And if you want to use Kartel, don't use him to promote St. Vincent as the place to be. Use him to talk to our young people and to let them understand, look, I spent 13 years in prison. It is not a good place. I want to implore you to stay away from crime and illicit activities that may lead to your incarceration.
And there is also Shine Barrow. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Shine Barrow, who's the leader of the opposition.
I'm quite familiar with Shine Barrow, who's now the opposition leader in Belize.
In Belize, yeah. I mean, he has done 9 years. He has a similar story, 9 years in jail.
Yes, he did 9 years, close associated with Puff Daddy and PDD, and he did 9 years, and he has said that he thought that he did an innocent 9 years. Like if he was thrown under the bus by more powerful people. But yes, there are these redemptive stories that we can celebrate. But even after Vybz Kartel left St. Vincent, I remember there was a video which showed him, he talked about being in Panama. And in that piece, There he was talking about gun. There he was talking about killing. So I'm not so sure there's any indication of redemption or any kind of
Right.
redemptive journey on his
Right,
part.
right. And of course, we always talk about the influence of that genre of Caribbean music. Obviously, we do have more conscious genres of reggae and things like that as well. Of the Queen Ifrica extraction, but
Yes.
the Cayman Sixes of the world and the Vibes Cartels of the music entertainment world. Many researchers have articulated their concerns over that connection, the influence of that music on things like gun violence, on youth delinquency, and things like that. I mean, we see a lot of young people on social media emulating a lot of what they see.
Indeed.
That there was a very frightening video from Grenada with a young man brandishing a gun while playing the music of Cayman Six, which is the Trinidad artist from Trinidad and Tobago. He himself was embroiled in a lot of issues, and his visit to Grenada was embroiled in a lot of controversy. Many were concerned that perhaps somebody like that should not be in Grenada. But what do we do in situations like that where we are unable to control really the social media narrative for young people? They are going to go on the TikToks and they are going to gravitate to these people, irrespective of how much moral panic those of, shall we say, a more older Caribbean society would speak to. They're going to go on their TikToks and do their things. They live in an entirely different bubble than we do.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that we need to panic. I think that we need to educate and mobilize our young people. Every generation is a little concerned about the generation coming after. Mom was concerned about her children. I am concerned about mine, and I'm sure you are, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So, but I think that we need to educate, because one of the interesting things when Vibes Cartel was here, is that I happened to do a morning program on another radio station, in which some young people said, look, I didn't even know who he was. So even though he's popular, there are some young people who are not attracted to that kind of music, don't bother with it, don't know who the man is. And here you had the government of St. Vincent throwing it up in their faces, only for them to discover that this was not a character that a national government should be promoting.
Yeah. Jomo, of course, you are, shall we say, of the revolutionary era. I'm sure that your folks were not pleased with your association with Comrade Bishop and others.
Well, I'll tell you, in the early days, my mom told me, when you get arrested, she lived in New York at the time. Yeah. Whenever you get arrested, do not call me.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was not arrested. The only time I was detained was in London one time. I was actually going to North Korea, and we were not supposed to say we were going to North Korea. And our Dominican colleague was ahead of the line and disclosed we were going to North Korea.
No,
we want to say we were going to Moscow, but he disclosed that we were going to North Korea. The British immigration guy immediately called MI5 or MI6, which one of them, and had him point out all of us in the line who were going to North Korea. We were pulled out of the line, and then we were detained at this Heathrow. I vividly remember it. It's called Heathrow Detention Center. I don't know if it's still there. And when we were there, we ended up, there were people there from Pakistan and so on who had been there for 9 months and so. But I was fortunate enough that I had a close family member. Well, she wasn't even family, but she had my same last name. And I remembered, and I had her number because the thing was to contact her on our way back, called Yvette Thomas. So I called up Yvette, and Yvette stormed up to Heathrow and says, I heard that you have my brother. Why are you holding my brother? So she got me out. I stayed with her for a few days. And then the security guys did not want us to leave. So they held on to my passport and said, well, when the next flight out to, we were doing Geneva, London, Geneva, Moscow, and then we were supposed to go on. They held our passport and said, when the next flight to Geneva, the Swiss Air flight comes along, we'll let you know. A whole day went by and I had not heard anything. But the man said, if 36 hours pass and you don't get a connection, we're going to send you back. So I eventually called Swiss Air and realized there were 6 Swiss Air flights that I had missed because the immigration had not called. So we went to the airport, I got my passport, and then went on my way. So that's the only time I was detained in my life.
Were there any Grenadians in that delegation, sir? At the time,
I can't recall. I can't recall, but in those days, I am almost certain there would have been some people from Grenada. But I can't recall who the persons might have been. In those days, I can tell you, in those days, there was my good friend from youth work, Leon Cornwell, who used to head up the NGMNYO. I can't remember if he was there. And then there was another brother from Jamaica that we used to call Slogo. He might have been, because there was at a lot of these meetings, there was Jomo, Bogo, and Slogo. So a lot, we used to be, but I can't recall if either Cornwall or Slogo was was pulled out of that line and detained.
Absolutely. Jomo, any closing comments on this issue? Because I understand that it did, at the time of your article, it did receive fierce pushback from sympathizers of the ULP.
Yes, significant pushback. But I am waiting because we were told that we're going to have significant payoff. So I'm waiting for a few more months, probably, because I'm dogged like that. I'm going to go to the tourism department and say, look, tell me what is the uptick that we have had from Vibes Cartel coming to St. Vincent and saying St. Vincent is the place to be. I doubt it's going to be significant, but
we will see how it goes.
They would do whatever they would do or say whatever they want to do, to make a case.
Yep.
Sometimes it's defending the indefensible.
Yep, absolutely. Mr. Jomo Thomas, thank you so much for appearing on this week's edition of the Bubb Report, sir.
No problem at all. Anytime.
Absolutely.
Take care, my brother.
Take care, my friend. That's Mr. Jomo Thomas, who is the former Speaker of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines House of Assembly, joining us to talk about his opinion piece that was penned in respect of Vibes Cartel's bromance with the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, and the outcry that resulted from his visits to the neighboring island there in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Of course, this has been yet another edition of the Bubb Report. Viewers and listeners, we thank you for staying with us. And certainly the program did not go as planned in the way that we expected it, but certainly the show must go on, and we will see you next week for another edition of the Bubb Report, where we are promising you cutting-edge, original, and unbiased reporting on the issues that matter in Grenada, the Caribbean, and the diaspora. I am your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb, thanking you for tuning in to this week's edition of the program. Take care now. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.